go over a couple dates. I know you guys that have been here at every one have heard all these dates, but we're going to go over them again. April 11th, we're going to have the boat check over at Central Middle School. Been over this a couple times with you guys. Make sure your boats are in line and go through the checklist before you take your boat there. That way you're not wasting your time getting it over there and then them saying, no, it's not right. It's a great way to stop a lot of hassle from us fishing around here from the Coast Guard, Marine Patrol, who knows, Border Patrol, you name it.
Joe, is there any other date, location, or anything if you can't make that day?
The auxiliary is nice enough to set something up with you. Sometimes they'll come to your house. Sometimes maybe you pull it down to Black River.
Sweet.
They get credit by giving those stickers out. They get some kind of credit from the Coast Guard. They just don't walk on your boat and give you this sticker. You got to make sure your stuff's right. And I'll get that information for you too, Jay.
Thanks.
So, April 18th and 19th is the spring fling that's coming together. It looks like we'll be at right around $10,000 for first place. That is out of Lexington with the captain's meeting on the 17th up at the theater up in Lexington. We've had 25 boats in years past in that tournament. We'll definitely be in the 40 to 50 boat range this year. So, weather permitting and ice out and all that, and it looks like we're going to hit it just about right. So, a week after that is salmon steaks on the 25th. I just got tickets in here for the salmon steaks. I'm waiting for the boat registration before I start selling them, which I'll have them next week. So, next week's seminar is John Dewey on whipping the St. Clair River, and I'm also trying to get a customs guy in here to talk a little bit about what their expectations are, or a Border Patrol guy, of us while we're out on the water, and if they board us, what they want us to do, and it's kind of to make it hassle-free for you guys. So, and then we have our annual open house on the 28th and 29th. I'll have Shimano will be here, Dreamweaver, Offshore Tackle, Riviera, Blood Run Tackle. The Rabble Rouser guy is going to be here. Silver Streaks, Wolverine Tackle. So it should be a really good open house this year. A lot of guys here. Most of the reps are going to be here on Saturday from about 9 till about 2. That's what I've asked them to be. So this week we have Steve Vandemark. He is a personal friend of a friend and my friend also. He's a fishing fanatic, for one. He did a seminar in here a few years ago, and he noticed, he said, man, Joel, it wasn't this crowded the last time we did a seminar, so it's really taken off, which is good. He's going to do it on open water trolling and techniques, and go ahead, Steve.
A little bit of history on myself. Been fishing since about the age of 4. Grew up on Saginaw Bay. Professionally, I've been doing it about 18 years. Some of the tournaments I fished was the MWT, which is Michigan Walleye Trail, the PWT, which most of you have heard about, but kind of went by the wayside, the FLW, the MWC, Master Walleye Circuit, WWA, which is the World Walleye Association, the NTC, which is National Team Challenge, and a few other odds and ends along the way, and a whole bunch of local stuff. As I said, of that, about 18 years I've been doing it. My total earnings are somewhere around $300,000, so can't quite afford to do it full time, so I still got to work a normal job just like everybody else. So I don't want to starve to death. It's been a lot of fun throughout the years doing it. Met a lot of really, really good people such as yourselves in here, and people that just have a passion for it. That's basically what I do. It might have cost me a marriage or two, but it's been a good run along the way so far. You know, it's something that gets in your blood, you just can't quit. True. What I'm going to talk about today is open water trolling. And just by a quick show of hands, how many folks have been up to Saginaw Bay and trolled up there already? So we've got quite a few. What about Lake Erie? Okay, quite a few. Everything I'm going to cover today, you can use on either body of water. Works really, really well. And I'm going to cover cranks and spinners and a few other things too that are really, really going to help you. Basically, let's get right down to the bread and butter of it. What I like to use when I'm trolling on the bay is an 8-foot telescopic rod. When I say this comes out to 8.5. I probably would use a 9-footer if I could, but unfortunately I don't have room to store it in the boat. I run a Ranger and they'll only allow 8 foot. The longer the rod, the more you got to fight with it. The reels that I use are the Dio 27s. The reason I use these, there are better reels, but these are the workhorse of the industry. I found them to be bulletproof, got a good warranty behind them, a great drag system. They just work for me. So everybody's got their own choices there. But what I also found out in using these and almost every other level line, they're not 100%. When I say that, what I do is I'll take the 6 that I'm going to use in tournaments, or 8, whatever the case may be. I'll take the line counters, I'll zero them out. First, you have to make sure you have the proper amount of line on each one. In other words, the same. When I do that, I'll zero them out. I'll drag them out to a certain distance with a dull rod, all at the same time. Then I'll come back and I'll look at the calibration on here. And if they're not calibrated right, say I go to 100 feet, one's going to be 107, one's going to be 100, the next one's 100, the next one could be 103. I know that's trivial, but if you are in a tournament, 3 to 4 feet, you're going to be off the fish. So you want to get 6 of them that are all the same, is what you want to do. The other ones, you can sell to your buddies cheap. You know, but that's what works for me and what I use predominantly. Some of the other things, everybody asks me, what kind of line do you use? I've been with Maxima forever and it's treated me really great. At one point I was sponsored by them, I'm not right now because I took a year off, but it's been good line. It's worked really well. There's a bunch of other ones that work well too. What I look for is a little bit of stretch, because when you're trolling, that fish is going to hit, the rod's going to pick part of it up. But a lot of guys went to Fireline when it first came out and they found out that that's a great application, but you have to have a rod that really gives, or you got to put a rubber snubber in there. And I know on salmon it's the same thing too when I salmon fish. If you got straight Fireline or braided line, there's not a lot of give to that. So that's why I use the model right there and what I use. Planer boards. When I first started out with my dad when I was, I don't know what age, and everybody probably went through that, where you had the big boards. You put them out, and you had weed whacker line, shower line curtains, and you take a rubber band, you snap it in half, and boom, it'd go to the back. Ran those for years, and then when I started tournament fishing, I got into these. Unbelievable. These you can put out almost as far as you can see them, but the nice thing is they have their own action. When one's going down, one's going up. You get a fish, you can set this back clip so it releases, comes to the back of the boat, and you reel it right in. Now what I did, this is the way they come right here. It's got this clip and this clip, and these are, as you get older too, like right there, trying to pinch that open, that's a son of a gun. So what I did, and Bruce would probably kill me if he knew I was saying this, I put these rubber pads on the back. It's anybody, if I get a co-angler who has arthritis or whatever in their hands, they can still pinch that with no problem, and it holds. It's just a rubber accessory pad that I put on the back, and then, I don't even know who makes these clips, but they're spring-loaded with Teflon in it, and anybody can pinch that off. So if I've got a co-angler and we're fishing a tournament, all you can do is come up there, bang, and it's off both of them that quick. Where these are really, really tough to take off at times. They'll work great, I mean, if you're in rough water and what have you, they never, ever come off. So, but that's just a little something I do to calibrate them and help out, so it's easier to take off. Rod holders, I use Ram rod holders most of the time. I've used 3 or 4 different ones. They just work for me because they 360 and what have you. You can go, sky's the limit on that stuff on what you want to spend. So, usually I'll run 3 up front, or excuse me, 3 in the back, and then 2 up front. I usually never run more than 8 rods on the boat, just because in tournaments, and I've usually only got 1 or 2 people with me. So, some of you, as I've seen guys run 14, 16 rods, and bless their heart, if they tangle up, they're going to spend hours cutting. I've been there. That's no fun. Another thing that's really crucial when you're trolling. I don't know, some of you know John Gilman. He was my old MWT partner back in the day. We experimented a lot, and that's how you learn things. What we did is we took a trolling motor on one, and this is many moons ago, up front on the boat, and then we ran the kicker on another one. Granted, this is in the spring. Most of the time when the fish are up high feeding in the spring, they're not, they're not down low, they come up high to feed. He was right beside me and kicking my tail like 3 to 1. So, we swapped out. Same thing. In the springtime, more so than any other time of the year, the trolling motor is the way to go. You can micromanage your speed, and speed can be critical. You can 1/10 of a mile an hour at a time. I've got a Trove on the front, but I also had a Marine Tech back in the day on the back, so when you sat down, you could just click it, and away you go. You were fishing within 2 minutes. So it sounds really trivial, but it's very, very important in the spring. Later on in the year, not so much, because those fish are, midway in the water column or on the bottom a lot more so than up high. Since I'm on that subject, speed, when to go fast, when to go slow. Obviously, most of you know in the springtime, the water's a lot colder. When I start pulling spinners, 1-1, actually at the beginning of the year, it's 0.9 to 1-1. But more importantly, first thing I'll do is cranks. You're gonna find this hard to believe, but on Lake Erie, on the pier, there's a lot of them. When we were running Husky jerks and even some reef runners, 0.9. You wouldn't think they'd hit a 0.9. They crush it and take off with it. You think about it in the wintertime when they come in, you watch them on the graph, and they're so lethargic and slow. On certain days they'll slam it, but other days they just come up, they look at it, and they drift off. It's the same thing in the springtime. Slower, the better, usually. As your water warms up later on in the day, kick it up to 1-2, 1-3, you'll get more reaction bites. Since I'm right there too, different types of cranks and when to use cranks and when to use spinners. Springtime, the slower the wobble, the better. Everybody is, just show of hands, how many people have fished Hottentots before? Wow, I'm surprised a lot of guys have fished Hottentots. You know how erratic they are in the water and how fast they go? If you run them first thing in the spring, and I've tried it, occasionally you'll catch fish, but not like later on in the summer. It's just too fast to action for walleyes. They want something that's wobbling and going slow. Typically, this is one of my favorite lures right here, but in a perch. This is a Matsu. They make them now with a little bit different formation or color or what have you. And I'll tip a little chunk of crawler on the back for scent. But I'll troll that about 1-1. Later on the day, 1-2 to 1-3 as the surface temp comes up. Killer in the springtime. It mimics a few other lures, but it works really, really well on Saginaw Bay. Not many folks use these. Most everybody uses Husky jerks, which I do too. Quick question. Port Austin is close to you here. A lot of folks fish Port Austin. Let's show of hands. I've won several tournaments coming out of Port Austin, and so is John Gilman now up there. If you get out on the rock ledge about 30 foot and you run these, you're going to lose some. But man, is there fish in them rocks. Last time I was there was myself, one boat, and another one off in the distance. We had a limit of fish, you wouldn't believe. It is so underutilized. And I also know between here and there are some hellacious fish. I was talking with some charter boat guys last fall. Nobody even knows these fish exist. I mean, nobody's fishing them. And I'm talking walleyes, big walleyes, 5 to 7 pound walleyes between here and there that they're on. You'll probably hear more of it because we have a tournament coming up in August, and I know where I'm going to be fishing. But they're out off in about 60, 70 feet of water, out by the drop-offs and structure. Nobody's on them. Nobody's touching those fish all year. So if I was you and I lived here, I'd go a little bit north and work my way back here along the structure. There's a lot of walleyes here that nobody's been playing with. And these fish, every year, are moving around. We didn't even start fishing the tip of the thumb until about 4 or 5 years ago, and now there's tournaments there. Because there's so many big fish as opposed to the inner bay. It's pretty close to you. So, when to use cranks, when to use worms. Rule of thumb, and it's not bulletproof, but 48 to 50 degrees, I'll go from cranks, and I'll run half and half spinners, let the fish tell me what they want. And usually I'll start real high, about 20 back with a 1 ounce, so I'm in that top 10 foot of the water column, then I'll work my way down. But in the springtime, for some reason, your more active fish usually come up higher. The ones in the bottom are below the thermocline, where it's, well, I shouldn't say thermocline, but where it's real, real cold, and they seem to be lethargic. They're harder to catch. But the ones that come up, they're usually active, especially Saginaw Bay and Lake Erie. Okay. Worm fishing. As it warms up, I'm going to go predominantly to worms over 50. Basically, bottom bouncers, everybody's probably seen them. I've talked to guys, and they'll run a 2 ounce bottom bouncer all year long. That's okay. It's fine and dandy. It works. But if you want to get the proper 45, and fish them properly, so you're just off the bottom and it's running correctly, rule of thumb is 1 ounce, 10 to 15 feet. 2 ounce, you're gonna go to 20, 25 feet. 3 ounce, you can cover anything in the bay with a 3 ounce, beyond that 20 feet. You wanna still have the 45. And when you're trolling, excuse me, set your speed, then let it out real slow. And you'll feel it tick the bottom, click it, hold it for a second, open it back up, tick the bottom again, and then set it. You'll be right on the bottom. Because what you have to remember is that 45's up on you, And if you do have it set properly, what you'll be able to do is, once you're trolling, you'll be able to sweep the rod, drop it back, and feel the bottom when you drop it back real fast. If you can't do that, you don't have enough line out and you're not working the bottom like you should. Certain days, and I can think of a couple tournaments we did really well in, they want this thing dragging right on the bottom. So if you're running 4 of them, let her go right to the bottom. I actually won an FLW up in Beta Knot, and that's all I had with bottom bouncers. I never had an inline out. And they were right dead on the bottom, but you had to put it right in your face to get them. So
How many feet max you say you run off them for the bouncers?
it's going to depend on your depth.
20, 25 feet.
Well, that's the depth of the water that I'm talking about. A 1 ounce is good to 10 to 15 feet depth of water. Then you're going to switch, if you're over 15 foot of water, to 25, go to a 2 ounce inline, or 2 ounce bottom bouncer. And then the same with a 3 ounce. If you're 30 feet and deeper, go to a 3 ounce. I can tell you off the top of my head, for every 1.5 feet you let out on a 2 ounce, it's going to sink a foot. On a 1 ounce, every 2 foot out you let, it's going to sink a foot. That's rule of thumb. But now when you can't run a 1 ounce in 30 feet of water and expect to let it back 60 feet and hit the bottom. It isn't going to work. You have to look at your line and make sure it's 45. But that's why you want to keep different size bottom bouncers. One does not fit all. And it's the same with inlines. I only use usually 2 inlines, whether I'm fishing Lake Erie or whether I'm fishing Saginaw Bay. And 2 different weights is what I mean. I'll use a 1 ounce and a 2 ounce. Very seldom, because of the slower speed, do I have to use more than a 2 ounce. The only place I can think I've used it is Dunkirk when I was fishing 70, 80 feet of water. A 1 ounce is 2 to 1. Every 2 foot you let out, it's going to go down 1 foot on a 1 ounce. Now, provided that's 1.1 mile an hour. That's, if you start going faster, it is going to come up. But if you're trolling 0.9 to 1.2, 1.3, you're okay. That's what you want. On a 2 ounce, it's 1.5 too, on a 2 ounce inline. So if you're letting out, 40 foot, you're going to be, 30 foot down on a 2 ounce. So just rule of thumb. The other way to do it is set your speed, let it free spool, bang, let it free spool again, bang, and then you divide it out mentally in your head, or you have a little hand calculator, and that'll tell you where you're at in the water now. Common sense, if you're marking your fish at 15 feet and 20 foot of water, you want to put it 1 foot above their head. Also take into consideration your boat setting a foot in the water. So you don't want to fish underneath them because their eyes are on top of their head, not on the bottom. They do have lateral lines and they can still pick up movement, but it's so much better if it's above them. They'll come up and hit it more so than go down and hit it. So, let's see. Any questions along the way too, just raise your hand. Feel free to shoot out like this gentleman did too. So I should have said that at the beginning. Spinners. I've used store-bought ones, but predominantly right now, I'll build my own. I'll get my components because I'm kind of anal on that in a way. I like lighter line, and it's cost me some wins in tournaments, but I also believe that I've caught a lot more fish because certain bodies of water that we fish, including Saginaw Bay now at times, Port Austin, that water is clean, clean, clean at times. When was it, 3 years ago? Pete Studders and myself were fishing a tournament, and he's looking at me like I'm nuts. I'm taking him to a couple different rock piles, so we're going to pull up here and go down there. He's looking at me like, bullshit. Just be patient. We put them out. You could see the fish 15 feet down chasing the spinners. They were loaded in there, and I don't know what they were eating, but it was remarkable. Most of the time, they're going to go for a stain, and they're going to find, the fish in the stained water. But it just so happened that they were loaded in there. But the other thing I also did was cut down to 10-pound test vanish, and I tied up my own leaders. From my chin to the ground is what I like to tie them. It just seems to be, I don't know, gives it the right whip or whatever. I experimented with longer ones, and the only time I'll go to longer ones is if I'm fishing in Dunkirk. The fish there are super line skitterish, and they want them 8-10 feet long. You're running behind dipsies and different things. But for Saginaw Bay and Lake Erie, that's all you need. About from your chin to the ground, about 48 inches, something like that, 52, somewhere in there. What I'll do is I'll tie a hook on the back, usually a treble or a number 2. Then what I'll do is I'll go the length of my hand, and I'll snell the other one right there. So what I like to have, and I'll demonstrate this too. This is, by some guys' standards, not very important. By mine, right on the top of the chart. What you do is you take your worm, you're going to hook them through the nose, just barely, just like that. And what that does is, see how he'll run straight like that? I've seen a lot of guys, way too many, and even some professional guys, hook him a ½ inch up. And what that'll do when it gets in the water, he bends over. And if you throw that in the water, you look at it, all it does is drag. There is no whip, no action to it, very little. But if you nose hook it, just barely like that, that drives the worm through the water like this, and it has double and triple the action. The other thing I do is take the back hook then, because everybody knows when that worm gets in the water, he likes to relax and straighten out. I'll put a loop in my line, and I'll hook him just below the collar of the worm. I'll throw him in, and I'll have that big loop, he'll straighten out some, but those fish, we've experimented with this hours and hours. You would not believe how many more strikes you'll get when this is hanging out and it's just back there doing this. Just like trout, when you go fishing for them, how smart they are. It is the same thing with walleyes, and it really, really works. So keep that in mind next time you're out. That's just a little teeny tidbit, but boy, it'll pay big dividends in the long run.
What about not hooking that back hook?
I tried that too, and what happens is the darn thing usually does this and gets snagged on it, and then you got a ball on it. You know. So I'll just hook it, put my line, a loop in it, and hook it by that collar. And that gives me plenty of room. Now there are days when a cold front came in, you can't get them to fit, can't get them to bite, so you got a fish form right on the bottom, and I'll go to a 3-hook single hook harness. And that's the other thing too, when I'm running bottom bouncers, I will not use a treble. Because if you're going to be dragging the bottom, especially like bait and knock where it's real mucky and what have you, every time that treble will get gooped up. Where if you're using singles, the second one you can bury in the worm, and it won't snag up and will scooch along the bottom like that. So, and I kind of sort of go on the smaller side for hooks instead of using, you know, a 1/0 or whatever. I'll go with the number 2. Just personal preference mostly, because I'm not meat fishing. I'm fishing for numbers, but I'm really using my drags when I'm bringing them in and what have you. I'm not forcing them in by any means.
Are you using a full worm, or do you ever break them in half?
Good point, actually. On Lake Erie, I'm going to show you how to run sliders, and you can only have so many points there. So what we do is run a single shank long hook with a bait keeper on that shank, and we'll bust a worm in half and thread it down through. So, but no, unless I'm getting a lot of short bites, I usually don't. But on the other side of the coin too, we fished Sault Ste. Marie, and you're fishing for smaller fish. You're fishing for 18 to 20 inch fish typically up there. We were busting them in half to make sure that when they did bite, we'd get them, because you're fishing a river system. So you have to target your bait kind of for your fish. So, but usually on Saginaw Bay and Lake Erie, don't, because there's some whopper fish there. So I'll use a full worm. What I like is when that hangs off the back and it does that. You can pop it in water and look at it while you're trolling. It's just, that's what you want. So it's whipping back and forth. So now I'm going to show you something that they outlawed at most of the tournaments. Dave Kolb and a few other guys brainstormed and came up with this. It's a legal way to double your presentation in the water. So instead of running 3 spinners per guy, you can run 6 spinners per guy. Wouldn't recommend doing it if you got 5 on the boat, you'll have a mess. But if there's 2 of you on there, then you can run 6 on each side, or you know, your 3 main lines and then this on it. It's going to work wonderfully for you. You're going to catch twice as many fish and probably get your limit in no time at all. So with the help of this gentleman who's never ran them before, I'm going to show you how you do that. I'll get a line angle here. Okay, here's what I'm going to do first. Let's just say I'm on the back of the boat right here. I'm going to set my line. I'm in 30 feet of water, so I'm going to let out 20. Then I'm going to put the board on, which I'll have you do. Just put it on the main line there. And then I'm going to send this out about 15 to 20 feet. And you actually want to... Now you got the board backwards for that one, man. Yeah, I do. So that's okay, just leave it there. The board does go the other way around, but okay, what I'm doing is I'm sending this out from the boat right now. Okay, everybody kinda got that? Okay, I'm gonna get to about 20 feet. I'm gonna take one of these red clips by offshore. I'm gonna stick it on my line, just like that. Nothing to it. Then I'm gonna let this run out as far as, it'll be my farthest board out. Then what I'll do is I have what I call the pre-rig slider. And I don't know if this came from the salmon fishing side or where, but it is deadly. And they have outlawed it in the most tournaments I fish now. But what you've got is you've got a predetermined amount of line with a 1 ounce inline on it. Let's say the fish are up high. Let's say they're down 10 feet. So you're gonna go a 20-foot of monofilament. And I keep a bunch of these in the boat so I can change them out depending upon how far or how deep the fish are. And like Lake Erie, we were fishing there one time. They were down 25 feet, so I hooked two 25s together, and then I put them on the inline. So what you do is you're gonna throw your spinner on here that you made up. You're gonna feed this into the water. You're gonna unwrap this. Usually I got it a little more organized, it comes off quicker, but. And it does help if you put bigger swivels on the end, especially when you're getting old and your eyesight's starting to get bad. I can see a lot easier that way. Then what I do is, this is into the water, correct? Got your worm on it, everything, it's going. You click this on your line up here, and you can just send it out, and it'll stop right at this red clip right here. So you've actually got one down in the water, and you got your board with one on it. The only problem is, if you get two 6 to 8 pound fish on at the same time, you better have 10, 12 pound test main line. Most of the time I'll run 8 or 10, but when I'm running sliders, I run a minimum of 10 on my main line, because this will really beat up your main line. But now the other secret is too, to make this legal, when you bring this fish in, you can't unclip it from here, because if you do, it's another designated line. So it's just like hand lining. You gotta hand over hand them into the boat, scoop them with the net, and put them in. Then you can unclip it. So it's just a unique, genius way to run 6 presentations per fisherman. And you can kind of think of it as like a crappie rig or a perch rig. You know how you got 2 hooks off? That's all this is. You got 2 presentations. But also keep in mind, if you do go to Lake Erie, you're only allowed X amount of points, so you have to use a single shank hook for your spinner on the back instead of 2 separate hooks, because of the number of points, if you're using a treble on your other one. So, just to keep you out of trouble there. But there's, it was remarkable. Some guys, Dave Kolb and a couple other guys, all of a sudden are winning all these tournaments, and everybody's like, oh, okay, how are they doing it? And, you can see him over there working, and he starts his rods way up high in the front, and they stagger down like that, but it's because of the pull he had on the rods. He had to do that. But it was ingenious. It really, really worked well. But then people were complaining unfair advantage, what have you, so they went to 1 presentation, 1 rod. But it is totally legal, so you can run it, and if you're fun fishing, and if the bite's going real hot and heavy, you're going to have your hands full bringing these in. Everybody, any questions on that? Everybody pretty much understand it? So I can go through it again real quick if you'd like.
Yeah,
Is that right?
6 feet.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I think that's probably where the idea came from years ago from that, sliders. But a little something too on spinners in the summertime. I actually won an RCL with it years ago. It's flashers, which I know you use a lot salmon fishing, the little 4-inchers. The bigger fish up by like Tawas in the Outer Bay, I would use that. And either you were zero or you were hero. They would come in and just smash it. The big fish would. You'd have it about that far. You'd go your little Dodger, and then about that much line, and then your spinner off that. And it was remarkable. You drop that down and keep it in the top half of the water column. They could see that and just come up and pow. But other days, I couldn't touch a fish on it. So if you put it out there for an hour and you try it, you're going to know if it really, really works. What I also found too is on the calm days, I could drop that to the bottom and pump it, and I could catch fish doing that. But when it seemed to work the best was on a little bit rougher days, because that thing flash up and down. And that was a difference on a couple different tournaments of me cashing a real good check and also winning one versus the other guy next to me not catching fish. So don't hesitate to experiment with something like that.
I use old spoons that I don't troll with anymore for salmon.
Yeah.
I'll make flashes out of them.
Little teeny ones.
Well, the magnet spoons that put chrome or something like that.
Yep.
I can make a flash out of them, put the split ring on each end, take the hook off.
Yep.
And lay that on the line, and it acts like a flasher.
Yep.
You don't have to buy flashers, you just use those.
Haven't tried that, but I imagine that would work. I did experiment with a lot of colors, and your silver, your gold, and your chartreuse on Saginaw Bay were the best ones. The rest of them, not so much. I had a light purple one that was working too one time, but the gold seemed to really be the best. It really did. So now this I'll cover with you. This is going to save you a lot of cash. How many people have ever went to Coast Watch? NOA Coast Watch? Okay. Joel, you can get the website from Joel. You want to go to that if you're going to Saginaw Bay or Lake Erie. Two things to look at. On the same website, you got to search around on it a little bit, but you click onto that and you look for pea green water, stained water. That is the warmest water in the bay. Your bait fish, and it's usually around the mouths in the springtime, mouths of the rivers, but not necessarily. In Saginaw Bay, it comes out and it'll puke out, and then the wind will blow it wherever it wants to go. This is an absolute sure thing. I've done it time and time and time again. I'll look for that stained water on it's nothing but the imagery of the bay is what it is, both Lake Erie and Saginaw Bay. You look at it, you find that pea green water, because that'll heat up real quick. You can also find the mud water, but it's hard to catch them there. Then what I do is I go to the same website, but it's got the longitude and latitude numbers on it, and it has a temperature of the surface water all throughout the whole bay. What you're looking for in the springtime, like 3 weeks after the ice is off, you're looking for the warmest water you can find. You match that up with the green water, and that's where you launch and you go fish. The bait fish flock to that. The walleyes are right there with them every time. I can't tell you how many times I picked them longitude, latitude numbers, found that, launched, went right there, and I started marking fish like crazy, and then you catch them. You know, they've taken the thought process right out of it with the electronics and everything that we have nowadays. So, but it's just no coastal watch is what it is. The water temperature can be deceiving a little bit because they don't show the islands, so you want to make sure you're not driving to like the Charity Island or one of the Bass Islands or something like that. So kind of take a look on there where that is, because the surface temp of that gets warmer than anything. So that'll just save you a little bit of time and trouble right there. But that is an absolute no-brainer, hands down positive thing. If you're going to come to Saginaw Bay and fish, I can throw you a bone right now. The man-made island's totally underutilized. Right by the Saginaw River to the right, those fish stage to go in right there, then they stage when they come out. I'll troll around that, I'll three-way it, I'll cast little teeny rubber things with quarter-ounce jigs to the island and pop them back out, have my limit in 2 hours. It's just loaded with fish, because that's a staging area for them, going in and coming back out. And you wouldn't believe some of the fish that are there this time of year. As soon as that ice is gone, bam, fills right up. So don't be scared to do that. Now, if it's chocolate milk, which it is sometimes, we get a lot of rain, you know, don't waste your time. But that's where I like to start, is by the mouths of the river this time of year, once all the ice is gone, and I work my way out. Whatever structure is closest to the mouths of the river is usually where these fish will go. They'll hold up right there, and then they move on from there. The big mollies, they like to go out and lay in the mud. They recuperate for 4 or 5 days, and then they start putting on the feed bag after they spawn. So Lake Erie is notorious for that. They'll come out in the basin, lay there, you can mark them all day long. They won't bite, then all of a sudden, a day or two later, bam, you'll catch 10 of them. You know, and why that is, I don't know, but that's just the process. So, let's go into graphs a little bit. You know, you think you've been fishing forever and you've learned everything, but last year I had a new partner, a younger guy, really into the electronics. I'm a Lowrance guy, he's a Humminbird guy, so we used his boat for a tournament over on Green Bay. And I'm like, you got that side imaging, what's that for, that scanning? I said, that's only good in rivers and what have you. He pretty much made me eat my words. We were out by the islands And he said, check this out. And he's a whiz with this thing. And I'm looking at it, and he said, look at these rocks coming up. And he said, oh, look at the fish here and there and there. Let's slide them out a little farther. And it's like he's watching us and doing it. Bam, we start catching fish. The side imaging, it really, really works. Show of hands how many guys in here have used it, side imaging. I know bass guys are really big. So we got a half a dozen guys or so that have. It is remarkable. You mark the sand, you can mark the boulders, all that, and you can mark them out 30, 40 feet, the fish laying out from you. In the springtime, I know on Lake Erie, it's awesome, same in Saginaw Bay. As the fish go down, you can still mark them there, but we mark ships, sunken stuff I didn't know existed, that I've been fishing forever. We went down in Detroit and fished that, and he showed me things that I didn't even know existed down there. So I wouldn't rule it out. I'm still learning on it, the side imaging, but everything else in the graph. You're buying two things when you buy a graph. You're buying power, and you're buying pixels. The pixels, the clarity of it, the more power you have, the more minuscule you're going to be able to see on that particular unit. So what I always say to folks, whatever your pocketbook can afford, that's what you want to spend your money on. Without a graph, you're going to be dead in the water, and it's just, you got to have it. So if you want to save a little bit on something else, do that. Spend the money on the graph. So, transducers, two different ways to go. I use a through hull, and external. The external obviously is a little bit better, but the problem here lies when I'm running all over the Great Lakes. You can hit logs, hit a picnic table one time. You never know what you're going to encounter. So it's always best to have a second one inside, either fiberglass in or one that you can drop in the bottom of the boat and use. That way you're not messed up. The other thing is maps, hot spots. They already did the homework for you. In here, if you get these maps, it shows you areas over the last years that have already been fished. They make a great one for Saginaw Bay. So if you pick that up, you'll see the hot spots, kind of tells you the longitude, latitude numbers, saves you a lot of time also. So, any questions? That's about all I've got for today. Now, if you guys want to get more in-depth or detailed, or you got questions, feel free to come out and ask me. Oh, one last thing I do want to cover that will help you out too. This is, over the last 20 years, what I've learned the hard way. Beginning of the springtime, when that water does turn to 50 degrees. This was my traditional blade, this size right here. Used it years and years and years. And a couple of tournaments, the guy beside me is just spanking fish, and I knew him really well. Well, I was running these. He was running these. I don't know if you can see them or not, 3s and 4s, and I'm running 5s. And I'm like, what difference does that have? We're doing 0.9. These hardly spin, they'll do a little bit of this, but these spin like crazy at 0.9. But they're very subtle, they don't throw off a lot of vibration. That time of year, that's kind of what the fish want. Just like when your lure's in the water, and it does this, as opposed to a Hottentot that's doing this. That was the only difference. So in the springtime now, I use 3s and 4s. As the water warms up, if it starts hitting that 60-degree mark, then I usually go to 5s. So that'll catch you a lot more fish. And I learned that the hard way, so hopefully you guys can go and do it right away and you'll be ahead of the game. The other thing is too, on the deep cups, when I say deep cups, these are Colorado deep cups, especially this one. Later on in the year, run these. Run at least one with your presentation. Because there's certain days that that's all they'll hit on Saginaw Bay. Or I shouldn't say all, but you'll 5 to 1 on everything else. I like Northland blades, I like Lakeland blades, and I buy some from Hagen's. Basically whatever's working, that's pretty much what I'm using. I'm always experimenting. But that's been a great color on Saginaw Bay, the antifreeze. It's been a real, real good color. So as gold, you can't go wrong with. You should always have a gold out and then a perch pattern. I use 4 Bs on Saginaw Bay, that's it. I use chartreuse, red, purple, and then occasionally a combination of green and red. That's it.
How many beads do you put on your spinner rig?
Early in the spring, I keep them small, Technically, a lot of guys, they'll go with the big stuff. I'll do that later on, but they just don't want a whole lot down there in the springtime. But I'll use the stackers a lot, like on here. I guess mostly because I've gotten lazy over the years, but I used to put individual beads on there and I'd stack it so it looked just like a minnow, you know, kind of fatten up the head, then I come down in the long tail. And I put a red bead on the front for the eye. Instead, I went to a red clevis now, and it's working the same. So, but I'm not a big believer in the great big beads unless I'm fishing for 9 and 10 pound fish out in Dunkirk. The rule of thumb is a big fish will hit a small presentation. A little fish will not hit a big presentation. And it's critical you get 5 in the box before you're going for, you know, big fish. So I'll start out with smaller stuff usually, and then work my way up if I'm into great big fish. Same with cranks. You know, the smaller the crank, the more fish you're apt to catch with it. The bigger the crank, you're kind of cutting yourself down a little bit. For instance, Fish Lake Erie, I was leading after day 1 on Lake Erie in an FLW, 150 boats. You would laugh if you seen the presentation I had. I had a reef runner, and then I'd hook a full crawler on the back. That thing was like this. I even laughed when I was catching fish with it because I couldn't believe it. But it was going slow in the water, and that worm was like a snake in the back. And I'd watch, I could see him feed right up the worm. The board had also moved. And I was catching monster fish with it, you know. Didn't happen to work on day 3, but day 1 and 2 it worked really well.
So
So,
when on Lake Erie, do you roll with boards on here?
all the time, yeah.
And a
The
big-
small boards, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a buddy that they fished it 20 years ago, and that's all they did was drift. Nobody was really running the boards at all. But we
Yep.
haven't been back since, so we didn't know if they, I've ice fished Erie, but not.
Was he using weight forward spinners? In other words, you're casting them and...
I think they're
reeling them in?
running like Hacitats and shit like that.
20 years ago, probably, yeah. But you have
We just didn't want
to...
to get down there and be that guy that was running boards, and everybody else is running around drifting and doing 100 boats and cause a bunch of problems.
Most everybody's trolling, even the guides now down there. What you have to think of is, you've got 1,000 active biting fish out there, and in order to catch them, you gotta go over them. Drifting, you know, you're at the mercy of the wind. Now, if you got a good wind, yeah, you're okay, but you're only gonna cover this much. Trolling, you're gonna cover this much, and you're gonna get in front of them active biters. Now, years ago, you could catch your limit like that, even drifting. Now, it's a little tougher in certain areas, you know. The last couple of years, they've sucked a lot of fish out of their ice fishing. I mean,
Can you
they're-
still catch, can you get 10, 12 fish, 10, 12 pounders, you know, trolling?
I wouldn't say that big on average, no.
You got some 10 pounders through the ice, and then everybody's.
Well, through the ice now, that's different.
Yeah,
They're
so you
loaded up with
don't get them
spawn, so an
trolling,
8 pounder is
yeah.
gonna be a 10 pounder, you know. But you will, the farther, what those fish do is they go and spawn, they come out, they rest for about a week, and then they start migrating already way back to the east. If you go to Dunkirk in the summertime, you're dealing with 100 foot of water, but you're gonna catch them 8 to 12 pound fish. I mean, they're monsters when you pull them up. But they're already to New York, Pennsylvania, and they kind of live out there in the summertime, and then they come back. That's their migration route. And it's a lot on the Saginaw Bay I'm finding out now too, with these guys I know this fall that caught these monster fish. Our fish are coming in, spawning, doing their thing. They'll stay in the bay for a month or two. They're hitting the charities, kind of hanging up a little bit. But you've got an unbelievable amount that are even coming around the front and coming down this way because of the bait. You know, and they're eating gobies like crazy, but they're looking for other bait, smelt and what have you. And the inner bay does not have that now. How many folks have heard about the limit being bumped to 10 now? And the size going to 13 inches? There's a lot of talk on that.
Oh, it hasn't done it yet? They're just talking about it?
Not that I'm aware of, but don't be a bit surprised if you see it come out. So there is an overabundance of small fish in Saginaw Bay. Now, we do have quite a few that are that 20-inch range too. You know,
That's
and
the
then
whole
we got
lake
the
Huron
3
system
class.
too. You're talking from the other side of that green buoy up here, all the way up.
Yeah, it isn't just Saginaw Bay, it's boom, here. You know, does that include the blue water all the way down through there?
The true definition is the lighthouse is where the lake starts.
Oh, okay, so that's that forward, north?
Yeah, yeah. We're already a 6-fish, size 13 down here.
Yeah, I've smashed them at the blue water with Joel before, man, it's a blast. But, that's about what I have. The other thing, like I said, is I use Vanish, which I talked about earlier. I tie all my harnesses with that. Power Pro makes a real good fluorocarbon tube that works. And I know some other guys have their own favorite stuff, but I've just stuck with that over the years till it's worked for me.
You're on Vanish for the actual crawler harnesses, right?
Yeah, the main line I don't.
What would you run for backer? 15 pounder, is that heavy for backer on?
No, I'm, believe it or not, an 8 pound, but when I'm going to sliders, then I'm 10 pound. On my main line, you
On
mean?
boards.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that
10
like
pound.
More diving and everything else?
I really work it and I set the drags so that if a big fish gets it, it just zzz, you know, I'm in no hurry to get them in. I don't want to horse them and lose a fish. The difference between most professional fishermen is 1 to 2 fish. The good guys is 1 to 2 fish in a tournament. If you can outbeat him and catch 2 extra fish, you're gonna have a pound on him per day. And it isn't, you know, most of these guys, they'll watch you when you reel, and they know each time you reel, it's 3 feet. So they know how far you are out, you know, when you're fishing. You wouldn't believe it. It's gotten extremely competitive. So, but that's, you know, basically what I do. So there are guys I know, some guys use 15 pounds straight, you know, on their main line. I just don't like that. I do the math in my head, and the quicker I can get it down, the less line I got to reel in is the better. 8 pounds is going to cut the water a lot easier than 15 pounds. So, and part of it's the diameter of the line. Maxim has a real good stretch to it, so if you get an 8-pound fish in there and he starts doing this, it's not going to rip the hooks out. The line's going to stretch a little bit with him, and you're going to get them. So that tends to work. So yes, sir.
You were mentioning worms and spinners. How about plastics? Any luck with those?
Yes and no. I mean, not like live bait. I have not. I've tried it, and I just have not. Now in the springtime jigging, absolutely. But trolling, no. I have used it when you're getting into the white bass and what have you. We were over by Huron last year. They just annihilated you. So we wanted to go in spoons, and that really tore them up. But I could have probably went to a rubber worm or something like that. But typically, we don't have that on the Great Lakes. We don't have a lot of white bass like you do in Lake Erie right now. There was an explosion of them last year. Well, everywhere you went there for a while, it was really, really bad. So, but that's an option if it gets rolled, you know, like that. So, but I still like the good old worm. Tends to work the best. So, yes,
You
sir.
were mentioning at one time, you had a couple of setups, one guy was using a kicker, one with a bomb out. You were saying that the time you were doing better with the kicker than the bomb out, or is that?
No, with the bow mount, with the bow mount. There are certain days where, you know, they'll even come up in the crop wash and hit it. But more so than not, the bow mount is the way to go. Walleyes aren't a super deep fish typically. They're more of a shallower fish, you
So
know.
it's the stealthier mode is what you're going with the bomb out.
Correct, you can slip right in there, like Port Austin, where we were fishing and catching these unbelievable fish. Real clear water, we came in there stealthy, we're sitting on a rock ledge, and you just work that rock ledge, and they shoot out from the rocks and hammer. But if you go in there with a lot of noise and whatever, boom, they're gone. You know, you can see them even swimming out ahead of you. So, but yeah. Yes, sir.
What time of day?
Just like, you know, perch fishing, early in the morning seems to be the best. And then, you know, later on in the afternoon. There's a good middle of the day sometimes on Saginaw Bay, a good bite. But as you know, walleyes are nighttime feeders predominantly. Mark Martin, I'm sure most of you have heard of him. He put a book out years ago about how many 10-pounders he's caught at night. Typically, if you want a trophy fish, if I was serious about it, I go fish at night. Years ago, I used to do a lot of it. It's amazing the size of fish I catch out there, but if I get my fish in the daytime and I just want to eat them, I go catch them most of the daytime now. But yeah, it's phenomenal if you can get there. Rob Ruckman, my partner, went, and there was a tournament on the bay last year. He went out at 4 o'clock in the morning. We're all getting there at daylight. He's coming in. I'm like, what'd you get? He's like, it was remarkable the fish he had. We went out there and I didn't even get a limit that morning in the same area he was because those fish got out of there once daylight came. But yeah. So that's, for walleyes, they are predominantly a nighttime feeder, but they'll, you know, they hit in the daytime too, especially. What I like to use the analogy is if you take a piece of cake and you're laying on the couch and you bring it by you, you're going to, oh, what the heck, you're going to take a bite. It's the same thing when you're fishing in the daytime. You get that close enough to that walleye, he's probably going to bite it. But is he going to chase it like he does early in the morning and at night, or, you know, probably not. You know, unless they get active, then they do. And certain times they do. So, any other questions? Yes, sir?
Have you tried tadpoles as compared to those inlines?
I have, yeah. Bruce threw me a whole bunch of those, and I played with them last year a little bit. I guess I'm just old school and locked into the other stuff, but I actually know a gentleman that won a tournament on those. So they do work, I just have not experimented with them enough to. In my head, I know what a 1 ounce and a 2 ounce does, so I'm still old school and playing with that. But yeah, those do, and they add a little bit of this to the line too, when you're down there. So in the future, I'll probably play with them some more. He gave us some great big ones. Cripes, I think you could use them for salmon fishing. Well, they're now like 50-some feet.
Yeah.
So, but I haven't experimented with those yet. I'm gonna try them another day.
Back to
Yes,
line, I was listening, not paying attention.
What?
Your harnesses on that Vanish, you still wanna run 8-10 pound on them too?
It depends. If I go to bait and knot, you can take water like this, look right through it. There's no stain. Yeah, I'll run 10-pound test. And it's cost me a couple tournaments up there, but I also won one there, $100,000. 10-pound test was the only difference between me and the majority of the other guys.
So 15 is a little extreme then?
Yeah, now I'm just talking for my harnesses.
Yeah,
10-pound
that's
test.
what I'm talking.
Yeah, yeah.
I run all mine at 15.
But if your water's stained up and you're dealing with mud or you're dealing with a lot of green water, no, it's not. Because they're going by lateral lines and the vibration and what's going by them, they may only be able to see this far. But you know, up there, cripes and fish are, you could drop a quarter and watch it go down 20 feet, you know? So you have to fish what the conditions dictate. And you play with it until you get it dialed in. But I do know in Beta Knock, I've cashed it. We took fourth last time I was there, Danny and I. I wasn't using but 10-pound test, and we came in with the biggest fish of the tournament. So both days. It made a difference. So I lengthened the leaders out, like I say, from here to the ground, and that's what we used. I also cut down to a glow in the dark, and it was about a little bigger than that right there. And it was late in the fall when the water was cold, because the fish wanted it like that. A lot of guys were starting to burn cranks already, but we stuck with meat and it paid off. So, any other questions?
Steve, let's take, oh, go ahead.
Have you ever tried cranks off of your drop line, your extra line when you put it on like that?
I have, and it works just like spinners. Mostly in the springtime. You can't do it at 2.2 because the pull of it would really, you'd have problems, put it that way. But no, when I'm doing 1.1 to 1.4 with cranks, it works deadly in the springtime, really deadly. Another thing that Ted Takasaki, he did it first and everybody kind of caught on. He put a bobber on a piece of line in between two swivels. He clipped that onto here on your main line, and then you could watch that bobber, and it was a strike indicator. When that bobber go under, you knew you had one. But typically, if it's a big enough fish, it's going to pull it back and you're going to see it. So, yeah, that worked quite well. Yes, sir.
I fish in Lake Erie, Fort Clinton,
Yep.
and you said night fishing for walleye.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we were fishing drifting during the daytime,
Yep.
and you cast out and count to 4 to let the bait,
Yep.
and then you start reeling, and you can hook walleye during the day.
Oh, yeah. That's what they used to do. All the charter boats did 15 years ago. They would catch them like crazy. But I don't know if there's less fish or the fish got educated on it. They're not doing quite as well. Certain times and certain periods they are. But yeah, you were using probably a weight forward spinner. I know a couple of the Double D and a couple different guys down there. They kind of came up with their own. It's like almost like a Erie Deary. It's got a wire in the front, wire on the back, and it's weight forward. Hit the bottom, and then they still work those. But you got to have a wind. You're so weather dependent. If you don't have wind, you're not going to cover any ground. So that's why a lot of guys now, charter guys, are opting to, if they don't have wind, they'll troll. So that way they cover ground and they get their clients' fish. So, but it's still effective at certain times, doing it and what have you. Plus you got to know where the fish are, what time of year, and what stage they are. Like right now, they're either in the river, they're staging to go in right now. And they'll be in there roughly 30 days, do their thing, and then they start dropping back out. The big hens go in first. Detroit, if you want to go down there and jig, April 4th to the 15th, that's when you're going to put trophies on the wall. Jigging down there. But provided the water's got to be clean enough too. If you get a ton of runoff, then you either got a hand line or you can't catch them because it's too darn dirty. So,
How about rod action?
as far as,
Like medium fast, what do you run for rod?
good question. These are both a little bit different. But here, when I'm burning worms, I want a little bit more sensitivity. Because as you can see, this is, a softer tip.
Moderate.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly what it is here. I don't know off the top of my head. What I do is, you don't need a super good feel for trolling, because obviously you don't have to spend a lot of money on a trolling rod. These, I think back in the day when I bought these, I got a whole pile of them, were about $50. I think now they're probably 70 or 80. They're old Gary Roach rods is what they are. It's an 8'6" medium light is what it is. No. What's that?
You see that, you don't have glasses.
Yeah, oh, trust me, I do. I'm like, but the other one's beefed up a little bit more. It's just a step heavier because I burn cranks with this. And Rob gave me a great deal on them. So Yeah, this is just a medium, it's not a light. So it's got more of a backbone. When you're pulling that crank through the water, you know, you got a treble hook in them, so they're hung up pretty good. Plus, I gotta snap these out of the rocks a lot of times when I'm under 30 feet. So I'll stop and pop them out and see if I can get my lures back, because they're not giving them away anymore, those lures, so. But yeah, and the worms, like I said, I like to fight them, you have a little softer backbone to the rock. And that's everybody's personal preference. When I first started, I had 7-foot ugly sticks, and I caught more fish than you could shake a stick at back in the late 80s, early 90s with those. And I swear to God, you couldn't break them. They were awesome. So these break pretty easy, but they have a lot more give to them, and they just so happen they fit pretty good in the rod locker, and I got a good deal on them. And I've been burning them up over the years. So, any other questions?
Steve will stick around for a bit. I'm sure if you guys have questions for him, let's give him a thank you.